Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was Dr. Doom reincarnation. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky over Muzdalifa was a weeping gray, a dreary curtain of rain that seemed to wash the color out of the world. It was the kind of weather that felt heavy, pressing down on the shoulders of the city's inhabitants. But for 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya, the weight was far more personal. He sat on the edge of the examination table, his small legs dangling, too short to reach the floor. The paper covering the table crinkled with every fidget, a sharp, annoying sound in the sterile silence of the doctor's office. Dr. Tsubasa sat in his swivel chair, leaning back with a groan of rusted springs. He was a round man with thick goggles and a mustache that seemed to droop with apathy. He held an X-ray film up to the light box, humming a low, discordant tune that vibrated in Izuku's chest. "Well," the doctor said, his voice devoid of bedside manner. "It's not good news, Mrs. Midoriya." Inko Midoriya, sitting in a plastic chair next to the bed, clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. "What do you mean, doctor? Is something wrong with him?" "Wrong? No. Unfortunate?" "Yes." Dr. Tsubasa tapped the X-ray with a pen. "You see this here? The pinky toe. It has 2 joints." Izuku blinked, his large green eyes darting from the X-ray to his own red shoes. He didn't understand. What did toes have to do with being a hero? What did toes have to do with All Might? By the age of 4, the doctor continued, sounding bored, a child should have manifested their quirk. Most of the early signs are biological shifts. The single-jointed pinky toe is the hallmark of the next stage of evolution. A streamlined body for a quirk-using society. He dropped the X-ray onto the desk. It landed with a slap that sounded like a judge's gavel. "Izuku here has the double joint. It's a recessive trait. Rare these days, but it happens." The doctor turned his chair to face the boy, his expression pitying but dismissive. "It means he has no quirk factor. He's quirkless. He should just give it up." The world stopped. For Izuku, the sound of the rain outside vanished. The humming of the fluorescent lights vanished. All that remained was a ringing in his ears and the hollow, crushing sensation of his heart plummeting into his stomach. Quirkless. The word was a void. It was a blank space where a future should have been. "Oh," Inko whispered. It was a small, broken sound. She looked at her son, her eyes instantly filling with tears. She didn't look at him with disgust or anger. She looked at him with heartbreak. And somehow, that was worse. The ride home was silent. The apartment was silent. Izuku went straight to his room. He didn't cry. Not yet. He felt numb, as if his body wasn't his own, as if he were piloting a hollow shell. He walked over to the computer desk, his movements mechanical. His hand, small and trembling, reached out to the mouse. He clicked on the video. The disaster footage played. The shaking camera, the smoke, the debris. And then, he appeared. All Might. The symbol of peace. He carried a bus on his back, laughing in the face of danger. "Fear not." "Why?" "Because I am here." Usually, this video filled Izuku with a fire that started in his belly and radiated to his fingertips. It made him want to punch the air and shout. But tonight, the fire didn't start. The screen was just light and pixels. "Mom?" Izuku's voice was a whisper. He turned his chair around. Inko was standing in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," he said again, pointing a shaking finger at the screen. "He saves everyone with a smile. Regardless of the trouble they're in. He saves them." Izuku forced a smile onto his own face. It was a grotesque, painful thing, wavering and weak. "Can I?" His voice cracked. "Can I be a hero too?" He waited. He waited for the words that would fight the doctor's diagnosis. He waited for "Yes, Izuku. You can be anything." He waited for "We'll find a way." Inko rushed forward. She fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around him, pulling his face into her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Izuku," she sobbed, her body shaking with the force of her grief. "I'm so sorry." Izuku's eyes remained open, staring over her shoulder at the darkened room. The tears finally came, hot and stinging, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of confirmation. She didn't believe in him. The numbness cracked, and despair poured in to fill the gaps. The reality of his existence settled upon him like a shroud. He was defective. He was empty. He was nothing, or so he thought. Deep within the recesses of his mind, buried under the genetic code of the Midoriya line, something stirred. It was not a quirk. It was something far older, far heavier. It was a soul that had been drifting through the ether, waiting for a vessel with the requisite willpower, the requisite pain, to anchor it. The despair was the key. But it wasn't just sadness. It was the sheer, unadulterated refusal to accept reality. I want to be a hero, the boy thought. I will be a hero, the boy screamed internally. And in the darkness of his subconscious, a voice that sounded like grinding tectonic plates whispered back, "Will you now?" 2 days passed. The world did not stop turning simply because Izuku Midoriya had been declared obsolete. The rain cleared, replaced by a harsh, mocking sunlight. Izuku found himself at the park. He didn't want to be there, but staying in the house felt like suffocating. His mother's eyes, red-rimmed and pitying, were too much to bear. He needed to breathe, but the park was the domain of Katsuki Bikugo. "Hey! It's Deku!" The shout cut through the playground chatter. Izuku froze near the sandbox. He looked up to see Katsuki marching toward him, flanked by his 2 lackeys. Katsuki, who had manifested his explosion quirk only weeks ago, walked with the swagger of a king inspecting his subjects. "Kaken," Izuku whispered, clutching the strap of his yellow backpack. "The old hag told my mom the news," Katsuki sneered, stopping a few feet away. Tiny pops of nitroglycerin sparked in his palms. "You're quirkless. You're actually quirkless." Izuku looked down at his red shoes. "The doctor said it's rare." "It's not rare," Katsuki scoffed. "It's trash. You're defected, Deku. You're a pebble on the side of the road." One of the lackeys, a boy with extendable fingers, laughed. "Does that mean he can't be a hero?" "Hero?" Katsuki's face twisted into a cruel grin. "He can't even be a sidekick. He's nothing. You shouldn't even be hanging out with us, Deku. You might catch a quirk disease or something, though I doubt you're lucky enough for that." "Stop it, Kaken," Izuku said, his voice trembling. He took a step back. "Stop? Or what?" Katsuki took a step forward. "What are you going to do? Cry? That's all you're good at." Katsuki lunged. It wasn't a lethal attack, just a shove meant to knock Izuku into the dirt, to establish the hierarchy that would define the rest of their lives. But as Katsuki moved, he activated his quirk. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe his control slipped. Or maybe, in his 4-year-old arrogance, he simply didn't care. He swung his right hand. A substantial explosion, larger than any he had produced before, detonated right in front of Izuku's face. Boom! The sound was deafening. Heat, raw and blistering, surged toward Izuku. The other children screamed. In that microsecond, time seemed to dilate. Izuku saw the fire. He felt the scorching heat on his skin. He saw the gleam of terror in Katsuki's eyes as the boy realized he had used too much power. Izuku should have burned. He should have been scarred, but he refused. It wasn't a conscious thought. It was a primal rejection of the outcome. "I will not die here. I will not be weak." Deep inside him, the sleeping giant woke up. The barrier between the conscious mind of Izuku Midoriya and the dormant soul of his reincarnation shattered. "Do not yield." Izuku's eyes, usually a soft, watery green, flashed with an unnatural, electric emerald luminance. He didn't flinch. He didn't cover his face. He threw his hand up, palm facing the explosion. It wasn't a quirk. There was no biological mechanism, no muscle activation. It was what made manifest. It was magic. A translucent, geometric shield of green energy materialized in the air between Izuku's palm and the explosion. Circles of glowing runes rotated within the barrier. The explosion slammed into the shield and was instantly nullified. The force was redirected sideways, blasting the sand out of the pit and knocking the 2 lackeys off their feet. Katsuki was thrown backward by the recoil of his own blast hitting an immovable object. Silence descended on the playground. Smoke curled from the center of the sandbox. In the middle of it stood Izuku. His backpack was singed, his clothes ruffled, but his skin was untouched. His arm was still extended, the fading remnants of the runic shield shimmering like heat haze before dissipating. Izuku stared at his hand. He stared at the smoke. His head felt like it was splitting open. A pressure, immense and ancient, was expanding inside his skull, pushing against the walls of his mind. Memories that were not his, castles of stone, masks of iron, green cloaks, a mother's soul trapped in hell, a rival made of rubber, flooded his synapses. Deku? Katsuki whispered, sitting in the dirt, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Izuku looked at Katsuki. But the expression on Izuku's face wasn't fear. It wasn't relief. It was confusion, followed immediately by a look of sheer, agonizing overload. Izuku gasped. He grabbed his head with both hands. The pain was blinding. It felt as if lightning was striking his brain over and over again. He choked out. The world tilted. The sky spun. The darkness rose up to swallow him. Izuku Midoriya collapsed face first into the sand, unconscious before he hit the ground. The coma was not a sleep. It was a journey. Izuku found himself standing on a stone floor. It was cold, polished obsidian that reflected a sky filled with swirling gray storm clouds. He looked down at his body. He was still 4 years old, wearing his t-shirt and shorts, but the air around him smelled of ozone, old parchment, and burning metal. He was in a throne room. It was vast, the ceiling lost in shadows. Banners hung from the pillars, deep green with a sigil he didn't recognize, a stylized bird of prey, or perhaps a plane. Torches burned with green fire along the walls, casting long, dancing shadows. Where am I? Izuku's voice echoed, sounding tiny in the cavernous space. Mom? Kaken? Silence, child. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was deep, baritone, and vibrated with an authority that made Izuku's knees shake. It wasn't yelling. It didn't need to yell. It commanded attention simply by existing. At the far end of the room, atop a dais of black stone, sat a throne. And upon the throne sat a figure. Izuku took a trembling step forward. The figure was clad in armor. Not the colorful, plastic-looking armor of the pro-heroes Izuku saw on TV. This was medieval, industrial, terrifying. It was polished silver metal, gleaming in the torchlight. A green tunic and a heavy hooded cloak draped over the armor, fastened with gold clasps. But it was the face that froze Izuku's blood. It was a mask of cold, unmoving metal. Grim, severe, and utterly imperious. Come closer, the figure commanded. Izuku didn't want to. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. But his legs moved on their own, drawn by a magnetic pull. He walked until he stood at the foot of the dais, looking up at the armored giant. Who are you? Izuku squeaked. Are you a villain? The figure leaned forward, the metal of his gauntlets scraping against the stone arms of the throne. A villain? The figure mused. The voice was tinged with amusement, but it was a cold, sharp amusement. Perspective is a mirror, boy. To the chaotic, order appears as villainy. To the weak, power appears as tyranny. I am neither hero nor villain. I am necessary. The figure stood. He was massive, towering over the child. He descended the stairs, his metal boots clanking rhythmically. I am Victor, the figure said. I am the sovereign. I am Doom. He stopped in front of Izuku. And you are the vessel. Vessel? Izuku tears welled up. I don't understand. I want to go home. I want my mom. Your mother is safe, Doom said, his tone softening imperceptibly. Mothers are sacred. We do not abandon them. Not ever. Doom knelt. It was a slow, deliberate movement, the plates of his armor shifting. He brought his metal face level with Izuku's. Tell me, boy. Why do you weep? Is it fear? Or is it the knowledge of your own inadequacy? Izuku sniffled, wiping his nose. The doctor, he said I'm quirkless. He said I can't be a hero. Kaken, he hurt me. He said I'm nothing. And do you believe them? I don't want to. Izuku cried. But they're right. I don't have a power. I'm just Izuku. Just Izuku, Doom repeated, tasting the name. Listen to me, child. Power is not a lottery of genetics. That is a lie fed to the masses to keep them complacent. True power comes from here. Doom tapped a metal finger against his own masked temple. And here. He tapped the chest piece over his heart. This world you live in, it is soft, Doom declared, standing up again and turning to look at the banners. It relies on chance. It relies on these quirks. It worships false idols who smile, while the foundations rot. They call you weak because you lack a biological crutch? Ha! Doom's laughter was a sharp bark. He turned back to Izuku, green energy crackling around his gauntlets. I was born a gypsy. Persecuted. Hunted. My hands were empty, my pockets poor. But I possessed a mind that could unravel the fabric of the universe. I mastered science that made gods tremble. I mastered sorcery that made demons kneel. I conquered a nation and made it a paradise. I did not have a quirk. I had will. Izuku watched, mesmerized. The fear was fading, replaced by awe. You used magic? Izuku asked. Like in the park? Precisely, Doom said. That was but a spark. A reflex. You tapped into my memories. Our memories. Doom paced around Izuku. We are entangled, you and I. I am the past. You are the present. My soul has traversed the void of death to find purchase in you. Do you know why? Izuku shook his head. Because you have the same fire, Doom said quietly. I watched you. I felt you staring at that screen, weeping not for yourself, but for your inability to save others. You desire to be a savior. Not for fame, not for money. But because you believe it is right. Doom stopped pacing. But you are weak. You are sentimental. You let others define your worth. If we remain as we are, you will be crushed. The world will chew you up and spit you out. Doom extended a hand. But I offer you a choice, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku looked at the gauntlet. I can fade away, Doom said. I can retreat into the dark corners of your mind and let you live your life as a quirkless nobody. You will be safe. You will be ordinary. You will cry yourself to sleep, but you will be normal. Doom's eyes, visible now through the slits of the mask, piercing blue, bored into Izuku. Or Doom continued, you accept me? You accept my knowledge. My ambition. My burden. We become one. You will gain the intellect to build miracles. You will gain the sorcery to defy reality. You will be the greatest hero this world has ever seen. But the cost is your innocence. My innocence? To save the world, you must be willing to rule it, Doom said sternly. You cannot be a sheep. You must be the shepherd. You must be hard. You must be superior. You will never again bow your head to a bully. You will never again accept impossible as an answer. Izuku looked at his small, scarred hands. He thought of Bakugo's explosion. He thought of the doctor's apathy. He thought of Inko's tears. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry. He didn't want pity. He wanted to help. He wanted to be like All Might. No, he wanted to be better. All Might couldn't save everyone. All Might couldn't stop the pain in Inko's eyes. If I accept, Izuku whispered. Will I still be me? You will be more than you, Doom promised. You will be Doom. And Doom will be you. We shall be the sovereign of peace. Izuku took a deep breath. He looked up at the towering metal giant. The fear was gone. In its place was a steel resolve that looked out of place on a 4-year-old's face. I don't want to be useless, Izuku said, his voice firming. I want to save them. I want to save everyone. Then take my hand, Doom commanded. And rise. Izuku reached out. His small, fleshy hand grasped the cold metal of Doom's gauntlet. At the moment of contact, the throne room exploded in green light. A torrent of information flooded Izuku's mind. Not just pictures, but understanding, calculus, quantum mechanics, robotics, thermodynamics, the structure of reality, the ley lines of magic, the language of the mystic arts, the history of Latveria, the pain of losing a mother to Mephisto, the rivalry with Reed Richards, the unyielding, unbreakable conviction that he alone could fix the flawed world. It didn't erase Izuku. It expanded him. It poured an ocean into a cup, but the cup did not break. It grew to hold the ocean. Izuku's kindness remained, but it was now armored in Doom's arrogance. Izuku's desire to save remained, but it was now guided by Doom's strategic genius. Izuku's shyness evaporated, burned away by the heat of a soul that had challenged gods and won. The light consumed everything. In the hospital room, the machines beeped steadily. Inko Midoriya sat by the bed, asleep. She had been there for 3 days, ever since the quirk accident at the park. Her face was pale, dried tears tracking through her makeup. On the bed, Izuku's finger twitched. Then, his eyes snapped open. They were green. But not the soft, mossy green of before. They were vibrant, electric, piercing. They were eyes that had seen centuries. Izuku sat up. He didn't struggle. He didn't groan. He sat up with a fluid, controlled motion, his spine perfectly straight. He looked at his hands. He flexed his fingers, feeling the phantom weight of gauntlets that weren't there. Yet, he felt the hum of the universe. He could sense the electricity flowing through the wires and the walls. He could feel the faint, residual magical energy clinging to his own skin. He took a deep breath. The air tasted stale, filtered. Unacceptable. He turned his head to look at his mother. A wave of profound affection washed over him. It was a dual affection, Izuku's love for the woman who raised him, and Doom's fierce, protective obsession with the mother figure. She was the one thing in this world that was pure. She was his Cynthia. And he would tear down the heavens before he let her suffer again. Mother, he said. His voice was still the high-pitched voice of a child, but the cadence had changed. The stutter was gone. The diction was precise, almost regal. Inko stirred. She blinked, then gasped as she saw him sitting up. Izuku! She scrambled out of the chair and threw her arms around him, weeping fresh tears. Oh, thank God! You're awake! I was so worried. The doctors said your brain activity was fluctuating wildly. They didn't know if... She pulled back, cupping his face. Are you okay? Do you hurt anywhere? Izuku looked at her. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. His touch was steady. Do not weep, mother, he said softly. Tears are a waste of hydration and resolve. Inko froze. She blinked, confused. Izuku? I am fine, he assured her. Better than fine. I have been enlightened. Enlightened? Sweetie, you hit your head hard. Katsuki, he? Inko bit her lip, anger and sadness warring in her eyes. I spoke to Mitsuki. I told her what happened. They are very sorry. Katsuki is a fool, Izuku said calmly. He climbed out of the hospital bed. He was short, wearing a hospital gown, but he stood with his chin raised, his hands clasped behind his back. Inko stared at him. The boy standing before her looked like her son, but he felt different. He felt heavy. Izuku, get back in bed. You need to rest. Rest is for those who lack purpose, Izuku stated. He walked to the window and looked out at the city lights of Muzurifu. He saw the heroes patrolling. He saw the billboards. He saw a chaotic, disorganized society held together by the flimsy tape of a single man's smile. It was inefficient. It was fragile. It required correction. Mother, Izuku said, turning back to her. The doctor was wrong. What? Inko asked, her voice trembling. He said I was powerless. He was incorrect. Izuku raised his hand. He concentrated. It wasn't hard. The pathways were already carved into his soul. He pulled on the ambient energy of the room, twisting it with his will. Small sparks of green lightning danced between his fingers. Then, with a hum, the metal tray table next to the bed lifted into the air. It didn't float gently like Inko's telekinesis. It snapped into position, held rigid by an invisible grip. The metal groaned as Izuku compressed it, crumpling the steel tube as if it were paper, then smoothed it back out again with a thought. Inko gasped, covering her mouth. Izuku! You have a quirk. It manifested. Oh my goodness, it's telekinesis. Like mine. Izuku lowered his hand, and the table settled back to the floor. It is not a quirk, Izuku corrected her, though he knew he would have to let the world believe it was for now. It is superiority. He looked at his mother. You will never have to apologize to me again, he vowed. The intensity in his eyes frightened her slightly, but the love in them was undeniable. I am not broken. I am not a victim. And I promise you, Mother. He looked back out the window, his reflection in the glass superimposed over the city. For a second, the reflection seemed to wear a metal mask. I am going to save this world. I will scour the rot from its foundations. I will bring order to this chaos. Izuku, you're sounding very grown up, Inko said, unnerved. You want to be a hero like All Might? Izuku smiled. It wasn't the beaming, goofy smile of the toddler who watched videos. It was a small, confident smirk. No, he said. All Might is a symbol. Symbols fade. I will be a sovereign. He walked over to his mother and took her hand, kissing it formally. Now, let us depart this place. The food is atrocious, and I have much work to do. Inko Midoriya didn't know what to say. She looked at her son, who suddenly seemed 10 feet tall. She dried her tears, a strange sense of calm settling over her. She didn't understand what had happened in that park, but one thing was clear. Her baby wasn't crying anymore. Okay, Izuku, she whispered, squeezing his hand. Let's go home. As they walked out of the hospital room, Izuku didn't look back. His mind was already racing, drafting blueprints. Phase 1, he thought, assess financial assets. Phase 2, acquire raw materials. Phase 3, construct the Mark-I armor. Bakugo Katsuki thinks he has power? Izuku's eyes glowed faintly green in the hallway shadows. I will show him the difference between a firecracker and a god. Time is a resource. To the common man, it is a river that flows endlessly, carrying them toward an inevitable, mundane end. To Victor Von Doom, and now, to Izuku Midoriya, time was raw material. It was clay to be molded, iron to be forged. 10 years. A decade had passed since the awakening in the hospital. 10 years since the boy who cried over a computer screen died, and the sovereign was born in his place. For the Midoriya household, the changes were subtle at first, then drastic. The All Might posters were not torn down in a fit of rage. They were simply removed, rolled up, and stored away. They were replaced not by posters of other heroes, but by schematics. The walls of Izuku's room became a chaotic tapestry of blueprints and arcane sigils. Where a normal child saw a toaster, Izuku saw a heating element and a timer relay. Where a normal child saw a smartphone, Izuku saw a processor capable of calculating ballistic trajectories if properly jailbroken. He did not attend after-school clubs. He did not play video games. He built. The workshop, age 10. Izuku? Inko knocked gently on the door. Dinner is ready, sweetie. Katsudan. The door opened. The room inside was dark, illuminated only by the emerald glow of a holographic display. A crude projector Izuku had cobbled together from a broken gaming console and several lenses scavenged from old cameras. Izuku sat at his desk, wearing welding goggles that looked comically large on his face. He was soldering a circuit board, but he wasn't using a soldering iron. A fine, needle-thin beam of green energy extended from his index finger, melting the tin with microscopic precision. One moment, Mother, Izuku said, his voice calm and deepening slightly with age. The gyroscopic stabilizer on the Mark III drone is misaligned by 0.4 degrees. Unacceptable. Inko sighed, a mix of pride and worry on her face. She had accepted that her son's quirk, which he called technosorcery, was complex. She didn't understand half of what he said anymore. Just don't stay up too late. You have school tomorrow. School, Izuku scoffed, though he didn't look up. A facility designed to produce obedient workers, not thinkers. But very well. I require nutrition for optimal brain function. He severed the energy beam, lifted the goggles, and turned. The smile he gave her was small, genuine, and entirely disarming. It was the one piece of Izuku that remained untouched by the steel of doom. Thank you, Mother. As Inko left, Izuku looked back at his desk. Sitting there was a gauntlet. It was ugly, a patchwork of scrap metal, exposed wires, and a repurposed battery pack from an electric scooter. To the world it was junk. To Izuku, it was the first step toward the throne. Aldera Junior High, the kingdom of noise. 4 years later, Aldera Junior High was a microcosm of society's failures. It was loud, chaotic, and governed by the strong. The teachers were complacent, caring only about their placement rates. The students were cruel, jockeying for social standing based on the flashiness of their genetics. Izuku Midoriya sat in the back row. He did not slouch. He did not scribble idly in his notebook. He sat with his hands clasped on his desk, his back not touching the chair, his eyes scanning the room with the detached disinterest of a scientist observing bacteria in a petri dish. His uniform was modified. The school regulations required a black gakurin. Izuku wore it, but the buttons were replaced with small brass sensors. Underneath the fabric, invisible to the naked eye, was a mesh of Kevlar weave lining he had synthesized using a chemical bath in his bathroom tub. He wore gloves, thin, dark green leather, that he never removed. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your futures, the homeroom teacher announced, waving a stack of papers. I would pass out these career aptitude forms, but who am I kidding? You all want to be heroes, don't you? The class erupted. Quirks fired off, hands turning into rocks, eyes floating out of sockets, minor telekinesis. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, basking in the noise. But remember, no power usage in school. It's against the rules. Teach. Don't lump me in with these extras. The voice cut through the noise like a whip crack. Katsuki Bakugo lounged in his chair, feet on the desk. He looked different than he had at 4. He was sharper, angrier, his ego inflated to the point of bursting. I'm not gonna be stuck at some bottom-feeder agency with these losers, Bakugo sneered. I'm going to the top. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the richest hero of all time. Oh, that's right, the teacher said, checking his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, the class gasped. UA was the holy grail. The acceptance rate was abysmal. That's impossible. Someone whispered. He's aiming for the national level? Bakugo grinned, soaking in the fear and admiration. And the teacher continued, his eyes sliding to the back of the room. It seems Midoriya is also applying to UA. The silence that followed was absolute. Usually, this would be the moment of laughter. Deku? The quirkless kid? Applying to UA? But nobody laughed. Slowly, heads turned. 30 pairs of eyes fixed on the boy in the back. Izuku didn't blink. He didn't look down. He simply tapped his finger against the desk. Tap, 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 a rhythm that sounded like a ticking clock. Midoriya? Bakugo's voice was low, a growl vibrating in his chest. Bakugo slammed his hands on his desk. Boom! An explosion rocked the room, scorching the wood. He was out of his seat in an instant, stalking toward Izuku. Hey, Deku, Bakugo hissed, looming over Izuku's desk. You think you're funny? We haven't talked in a while because you've been playing Ghost, but don't think I forgot what you are. You're a pebble. Izuku slowly raised his eyes. Over the years, the dynamic had shifted. Bakugo had tried to bully Izuku, certainly. But every time he did, something strange happened. His explosions would miss. He would trip. His homework would spontaneously combust. Izuku never raised a hand, never threw a punch. He just watched, and things happened. Rumors spread that Izuku's quirk was bad luck. Or a curse. Katsuki, Izuku said. His voice was smooth, lacking any trace of fear. Your volume is inversely proportional to your intellect. Must you bark so loudly? It disrupts my concentration. What did you say? Bakugo's palms crackled. Smoke rose, filling the space between them. You think you can stand in the same ring as me? You're quirkless. The records say telekinesis, but I know you're faking it. You haven't moved anything heavier than a pencil in class. The records, Izuku said, bored, are a bureaucratic formality. As for UA, it is the premier institution for hero licensing. Therefore, I shall attend. It is the logical path. You think you can just walk in? Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. The class held its breath. Izuku didn't move his arms. He simply stared into Bakugo's eyes. Unhand me, Katsuki. Or what? ZZT. A small, high-frequency shock, imperceptible to everyone else, discharged from the collar of Izuku's uniform. It wasn't magic. It was a localized taser circuit woven into the fabric. Bakugo flinched, his hand spasming and releasing the collar. He stumbled back, looking at his hand in confusion. It was numb. What the hell? I do not require physical might to surpass you, Izuku said, straightening his collar with a gloved hand. You rely on nitroglycerin and anger. A volatile combination, prone to failure. I rely on perfection. Izuku stood up. The bell rang, saving the tension from snapping into violence. Class is dismissed, Izuku declared, though he wasn't the teacher. He picked up his bag, a heavy, reinforced case, and walked past Bakugo. Bakugo stood there, trembling. Not with fear, but with a fury he couldn't articulate. Izuku didn't look at him like a rival. He looked at him like he was a bug on a windshield. Don't you ignore me! Bakugo screamed, spinning around and firing an explosion at Izuku's back. Izuku didn't turn. He didn't need to. He muttered a single word under his breath. Malthus. A shimmer of green light, thin as a sheet of glass, appeared behind his back. The explosion hit it and dissipated instantly, absorbed into nothingness. Izuku kept walking. He exited the classroom, leaving a smoking scorch mark on the floor and a silent, terrified class behind him. The path of the sovereign. The walk home was a daily ritual of data collection. Izuku took different routes, mapping the city's crime hotspots, hero response times, and structural weaknesses in the infrastructure. Today, he chose the underpass route. It was inefficient, dark, and damp, but it offered privacy. He pulled a small device from his pocket. It looked like a smartphone, but thicker. He tapped the screen, reviewing the schematics for his latest project. Project Doombot Iteration 4. Propulsion systems are still lagging, he muttered to himself. The miniature arc reactors are unstable. Perhaps if I substitute the palladium core for a synthesized vibranium isotope. No, the cost is prohibitive, he sighed. Being a genius was easy. Being a genius on a teenager's allowance was the true challenge. As he walked under the tunnel, the manhole cover rattled. Izuku stopped. He didn't look up from his device. Sensors indicate a fluctuation in fluid dynamics, he noted dryly. From the sewer grate, a mass of dark, foul-smelling sludge erupted. It coalesced into a towering, liquid form with manic, bulging eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain gurgled, his voice wet and distorted. You'll do nicely, kid. Just let me take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. The villain lunged. In any other timeline, Izuku Midoriya would have frozen. He would have panicked. He would have been suffocated. But this Izuku had the soul of a man who had stared down Galactus. A pile of sewage was hardly cause for alarm. Izuku sidestepped. The movement was minimal, precise. The sludge slammed into the pavement where he had been standing a second ago. Physiology, amorphous liquid, Izuku analyzed aloud, slipping the phone into his pocket and raising his right hand. Weaknesses, solidification, evaporation, or containment. Intelligence, negligible. You little rat! The villain swung a massive liquid tentacle. Izuku snapped his fingers. His gloves were not just leather. They were conduits. From the metal nodes on his knuckles, a burst of hard light energy erupted. It wasn't a blast. It was a construct. A glowing green ring materialized in the air, intercepting the tentacle. The villain yelped as the ring contracted, severing the limb. The sludge splashed harmlessly to the ground. What is this? A quirk? The villain hissed, reforming the arm. It doesn't matter. You can't grab me. I'm fluid. I have no intention of grabbing you, Izuku said coldly. I intend to bottle you. He reached into his bag and pulled out a metal canister the size of a thermos. He threw it into the air. System, activate vacuum vortex. The canister hovered, spinning rapidly. A cone of blue light shot out from the bottom, enveloping the villain. What the? The suction was immense. It wasn't just wind. It was a localized gravity well, a piece of tech Izuku had reverse-engineered from studying the Hero 13's quirk videos. The sludge villain screamed as his body was stretched, distorted, and pulled toward the canister. No! Stop! I'll kill you! Silence, filth, Izuku commanded. He raised his left hand, weaving a complex sigil in the air with his fingers. Crimson bands of Sidorak. Containment weave. Red bands of mystic energy materialized, wrapping around the swirling sludge, compressing it further, forcing it into the canister's field. With a final, wet slurp, the entire villain was sucked into the metal tube. The lid slammed shut with a mechanical hiss and a magical seal. The canister dropped. Izuku caught it without looking. The tunnel was silent again. Izuku inspected the canister. Filter capacity at 80%. Acceptable. I'll need to clean the intake valves. Clang. The manhole cover flew into the air, spinning like a coin. A massive figure leaped from the sewer, landing with a ground-shaking thud. Have no fear! The figure boomed, striking a pose. For I am he. All Might froze. He blinked his blue eyes, looking around the tunnel. He saw the slime residue on the walls. He saw the scorch marks. And he saw a green-haired middle schooler dusting off a metal thermos. All Might finished, confused. Young man! Did you see a villain? A sludge-like monster? I was chasing him through the sewers. Izuku looked up. This was him. The pillar. The symbol. The man Inko worshipped. The man the world relied on. Doom's memories assessed him instantly. Powerful. Charismatic. A brute. A symbol of chaos masquerading as order. But Izuku's memories felt a pang of nostalgia. He's so big. You are late, All Might, Izuku said. His tone wasn't awestruck. It was critical. All Might flinched. He wasn't used to being scolded by teenagers. Well, the sewer system is quite a maze. But the villain. Izuku tossed the canister. All Might caught it, fumbling slightly. He stared at the metal tube. Inside, through a small reinforced glass window, the sludge villain pressed his face against the glass, weeping. He is contained, Izuku stated. I utilized a localized gravitational vacuum to compress his mass. He is harmless now. Please ensure he is delivered to the police. I have secured the lid with a biometric lock. The code is 0-0-0-1. Simple enough for the authorities to remember. All Might stared at the boy. You did this? With your quirk? Technology and application of will, Izuku corrected. He adjusted his bag strap. Now, if you will excuse me. I have homework. He turned to walk away. Wait! All Might shouted. Izuku stopped. All Might deflated slightly, not physically, but emotionally. He was intrigued. This boy had taken down a villain that had evaded the number one hero, and he acted like he had just taken out the trash. Young man! What is your name? Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya Shonen. That was impressive. Dangerous, but impressive. Most pros couldn't have handled a fluid type so efficiently. Most pros, Izuku said, turning his head slightly, are incompetent. They rely on brute force and property damage. Efficiency is a lost art. All Might laughed nervously. A harsh critic. But you have the spirit. Are you aiming to be a hero? Izuku turned fully around. He looked at All Might, really looked at him, and then, his eyes narrowed. Izuku's vision shifted. A spell he kept active constantly, the Eye of Agamotto, a minor replication, allowed him to see auras and energy. He saw the blazing sun of One for All. But beneath it, he saw the rot. He saw the missing lung. The shattered stomach. The spider web of scar tissue holding the man together. The clock ticking down. You are dying, Izuku said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. All Might stiffened. The smile didn't drop, but the tension in his shoulders spiked. Excuse me? Your respiratory system is compromised. Your gastric system is non-existent. You are maintaining your muscular form through sheer willpower, but your energy signature is flickering. Like a dying star. Izuku took a step forward. Is this the symbol of peace? Izuku asked, his voice laced with Doom's disappointment. A man holding up the sky with a broken back? You preach safety, yet you are one bad day away from leaving the world in darkness. Your system is flawed, All Might. All Might's smile finally faltered. A puff of steam exploded from his body. Poof! The muscle mass vanished. The skeletal, gaunt figure of Toshinori Yagi stood in the oversized clothes. Blood trickled from his mouth. How? Toshinori wheezed. How could you possibly know? I see everything, Izuku said. He didn't look horrified by the transformation. He looked vindicated. You confirmed my hypothesis. The Pillar of Peace is a single point of failure. If you break, the roof collapses. Toshinori slumped against the tunnel wall. You're sharp, kid. Too sharp. Yes. I was injured 5 years ago. I can only do this hero work for about 3 hours a day, and yet you continue, Izuku noted. Why? Why not train a successor? Why not build a system that does not rely on one man? Because the world needs a symbol. Toshinori argued, clutching his chest. People need to believe that there's someone who can always save them. If I show weakness, the villains will rise up. Fear will return. Fear is already here, Izuku countered. It is just hiding in the shadows, waiting for your light to dim. You are creating a vacuum, All Might. And when you are gone, the implosion will be catastrophic. Izuku walked closer, looking up at the skeletal man. You asked if I want to be a hero, Izuku said. Do you? Toshinori asked, looking into the boy's intense green eyes. With that brain, with that power, you could be a great one. Hero is a small word, Izuku replied. Heroes react. Heroes fight fires. I intend to be the architect who builds a fireproof world. He turned his back on the symbol of peace. I will go to UA, Izuku declared. Not to learn how to punch, but to learn the rules of this game so I may rewrite them. Rest, All Might. Your watch is ending. Mine is about to begin. Izuku walked out of the tunnel, leaving the number 1 hero sitting in the damp darkness, clutching a bottle of sludge, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the wind, homecoming and the book. Izuku arrived home at 5:30 p.m. precisely. I'm home, he announced, removing his shoes. Welcome back, Izuku. Inko called from the kitchen. How was school? Adequate. The curriculum is elementary. Izuku walked to his room. He placed the heavy bag on his desk. He sat down and pulled out a notebook. It was a standard composition notebook, but the cover had been reinforced with metal plating. The title, written in black marker, read, Hero Analysis for the Future. He stared at the title. He remembered being 4 years old, clutching a similar notebook, hoping to learn from the heroes. He remembered the all. He picked up a marker. He didn't cross out the title. He simply added to it, Hero Analysis for the Future. Governance. He opened the book to a fresh page. He began to sketch. Not a hero costume, but a suit of armor. Design Alpha 1. Material, titanium gold alloy, pending acquisition. Power source, Mystic Tech hybrid generator. Objective, total global security. He paused. He thought of Bakugo's face, the anger, the entitlement. He thought of All Might's skeletal form, the fragility, the desperation. They were both symptoms of the same disease. A society obsessed with genetic lottery. A society that equated physical power with moral authority. They are children playing with matches, Izuku whispered to the empty room. He raised his hand. A small doombot, a spider-like drone the size of a fist, crawled down from the ceiling and landed on his palm. We will take their matches away, Izuku told the machine. And we will give them the sun. The drone chirped in binary. Izuku closed the notebook. 2 months later, the beach. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Once a beautiful coastline, now an illegal dumping ground for the city's trash. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, and mountains of scrap metal choked the sand. For a normal person, it was an eyesore. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a gold mine. He stood atop a pile of washing machines, wearing a heavy work jumpsuit and his goggles. The wind whipped his green cape, a prototype made of fire-resistant cloth, around him. Subject, 400-pound engine block, Izuku muttered. He extended his hand. Levitate. The engine block groaned. Rust flaked off as it lifted into the air, surrounded by a green aura. Izuku controlled it with a casual flick of his wrist, floating it over to a cleared section of the beach where he had established a sorting station. He didn't clean the beach to train his muscles. That was a side effect. He cleaned it to harvest. Copper wire. Rare earth magnets. Steel plating. Electronic components. Midoriya? Izuku paused. He lowered the engine block gently. He turned to see a young man standing at the edge of the beach. He had messy purple hair and tired eyes with deep bags under them. Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku recognized him from a neighboring school. You're the guy from Aldera, right? Shinso asked, hands in his pockets. The one they say has a curse quirk. Curse is a term used by the ignorant to describe the misunderstood, Izuku replied, jumping down from the trash pile. Can I help you? I saw you moving the trash, Shinso said. Are you training for UA? I am. Shinso kicked the sand. Must be nice. Having a telekinetic quirk. Useful against robots. Izuku detected the bitterness. It was a flavor he knew well. It tasted like Latveria before the revolution. You possess a grievance, Izuku observed. My quirk is brainwashing, Shinso blurted out, as if expecting to be rejected. It doesn't work on robots. The entrance exam is biased against me. I'm going to fail before I even start. Izuku studied him. Brainwashing. Mental domination. A tool of control. A mental quirk, Izuku mused. Powerful. Dangerous. Leaders are defined by their ability to sway minds. People call it a villain's quirk, Shinso muttered. People are idiots, Izuku said sharply. Shinso looked up, surprised. Izuku walked over to a pile of scrap. He pulled out a rusted iron rod. Listen to me, Hitoshi Shinso. The exam is indeed biased toward physical destruction. It is a crude metric designed by simpletons who like loud noises. Izuku bent the iron rod into a circle with his bare hands, reinforcing it with a touch of magic to soften the metal. But a true sovereign does not complain about the rules. He exploits them. He circumvents them. Or he crushes them. Izuku tossed the iron ring to Shinso. If you cannot destroy the robots, do not fight them. Use your voice. Hijack the other examinees. Make them destroy the robots for you. Or find the rescue switch. There are always variables. Hijack the examinees? Isn't that cheating? It is strategy, Izuku corrected. Is a general cheating when he commands his troops? You have a power that commands obedience. Use it. If Yui calls it villainy, then Yui is flawed. Proving them wrong is your duty. Shinso stared at the ring in his hands. He looked at Izuku. For the first time in his life, someone didn't look at him with suspicion. Izuku looked at him with expectation. Why are you telling me this? Shinso asked. Aren't we rivals? Izuku smirked beneath his mask, a medical mask he wore for the dust. I do not have rivals, Izuku said. I have potential assets. Do not disappoint me, Shinso. I expect to see you on the other side. Izuku turned back to his trash pile. He raised both hands. A mountain of scrap metal, cars, microwaves, beams, rose into the air, a swirling tornado of junk. Shinso watched, jaw dropped, as the green-haired boy began to disassemble the tornado mid-air, stripping the valuable parts and compressing the waste into neat cubes. He's not just training, Shinso realized. He's building an army. The night before the exam, the beach was clear. It sparkled under the moonlight. The trash was gone, transformed into a stockpile hidden in a rented storage unit, paid for by selling refurbished electronics online. Izuku sat in his room. On the desk stood the result of 10 months of labor. It wasn't a full suit of armor yet. He lacked the resources for the full doom plate. But it was a start. 2 heavy, green metal gauntlets with intricate circuitry etched into the surface. Boots with kinetic dampeners and jump jets. A chest plate housing a localized arc reactor prototype, green light pulsing, and a hood. A heavy, green weave hood attached to a cloak. He didn't wear a full mask yet. He felt he hadn't earned the face of doom. Not until he conquered UA. He put on the gauntlets. They hummed with power. He felt the magic in his veins sync with the technology in the metal. Tomorrow, the voice of doom whispered in his mind. Tomorrow we show them. Izuku looked in the mirror. His eyes glowed. UA High School, he said softly. Prepare yourself. Order is coming. The morning sun of early spring did not gently wake Izuku Midoriya. He was already awake. He had been awake since 4 a.m., the hour of the wolf, the hour when the mind was sharpest and the world was silent enough to hear the hum of electricity in the walls. Izuku stood before the full-length mirror in his bedroom. The room, once a shrine to All Might, was now a laboratory. The walls were lined with corkboards covered in arithmancy charts, schematics for microfusion cells, and maps of the muscular system. He looked at his reflection. The boy in the mirror was 15, but his eyes were ancient. They held the weight of a man who had ruled a nation, lost a mother to hellfire, and challenged the cosmos itself. Today, Izuku whispered. The word was not a question, it was a gavel strike. He began the ritual of armoring himself. He did not wear the standard tracksuits other examinees would undoubtedly don. Such attire was for athletes. Izuku was not an athlete, he was an architect of the future. First came the bodysuit, a dark green, fire-retardant weave lined with kinetic impact gel. It hugged his frame, highlighting a physique that was lean but wired with dense, functional muscle. Next, the boots. Heavy, metallic greaves that encased his shins and feet. They were magnetic, equipped with micro-thrusters in the soles and heels. He stomped once. Clank. The sound was solid. Reassuring. Then, the gauntlets. These were his masterpiece, the Mark II manipulators. They were silver and green, extending from his fingertips to his elbows. Etched into the metal were not just circuits, but runes, tiny, microscopic engravings of the Vishanti and the Crimson Cosmos, blending science and sorcery into a unified conduit. Finally, the cloak. It was a heavy, emerald fabric, clasped at his shoulders with gold medallions. He pulled the hood up. It cast a shadow over the upper half of his face, leaving only his mouth and chin visible. Izuku? He turned. Inko stood in the doorway. She held a bento box, her hands trembling slightly. She looked at him, her son, looking less like a teenager and more like a medieval knight lost in a sci-fi movie. You look. She paused, searching for the word. Strong. Izuku softened. The hard lines of his face relaxed. He walked over to her, the heavy boots thudding softly on the carpet, and took the bento box with a gauntlet hand. Thank you, Mother. Are you nervous? She asked, reaching up to adjust his collar, a habit from his childhood. Nervousness implies a fear of the unknown, Izuku replied gently. I have calculated the variables. I have analyzed the admission trends. I have simulated the combat scenarios. There is no unknown. There is only the inevitable. Inko smiled, though her eyes were wet. Just be careful. Don't let the power go to your head, okay? Be kind. Izuku looked at her. I will be just, he promised. Kindness is a luxury. Justice is a necessity. But for you, Mother, I shall be safe. He turned and walked out of the apartment. As he descended the stairs, he did not look back. The sovereign did not look back. The gates of Yue. The entrance to Yue High School was a massive glass and steel archway, designed to intimidate. It was a monument to the hero society, grand, expensive, and ultimately, a facade. Izuku walked up the long path. Students were swarming around him, a sea of black uniforms and nervous chatter. He parted the crowd like the prow of an icebreaker. People instinctively moved out of his way, sensing the aura of absolute certainty radiating from him. Out of my way, extras! The shout came from behind. Izuku didn't flinch, but he felt the annoyance flare in his mind, or rather, Doom's mind. The loud one again. Katsuki Bakugo stomped past a group of trembling students. He spotted the green hood. DKU! Bakugo sprinted forward, grabbing Izuku's shoulder. I told you not to apply. You think wearing a Halloween costume makes you a hero? You're a pebble. A quirkless. Izuku stopped. He didn't turn his body. He simply rotated his head slightly, the green hood obscuring his eyes. He tapped a finger against the thumb of his left gauntlet. Silence. It wasn't a shout. It was a command laced with a low-level binding spell. A sudden, invisible pressure clamped around Bakugo's jaw. The blond boy's eyes went wide. He tried to open his mouth to scream, but it was glued shut by a force he couldn't see. He clawed at his face, panic setting in. You are disrupting the peace, Katsuki, Izuku said, his voice low and cold. Save your breath for the exam. You will need every ounce of oxygen to keep up with me. He flicked his finger, releasing the spell. Bakugo gasped, coughing, stumbling back. What did you? Magic, Izuku said simply, knowing Bakugo would interpret it as a lie or a trick. Technology. Superiority. Choose your preferred term. Izuku continued walking. As he neared the gate, a girl with brown hair and a round face, Ochako Uraraka, was so busy staring at the massive structure that she tripped over her own feet. Ah! She braced for impact. It never came. Izuku didn't catch her. He didn't rush forward. He simply extended a hand from under his cloak. Levitate. A subtle hum of green energy surrounded the girl. She froze inches from the concrete, hovering in midair. Izuku made a lifting motion, and she was righted, her feet placed gently back on the ground. Whoa! Uraraka blinked, looking at her hands, then at the boy in the hood. Did you catch me with your mind? That's amazing. I'm so nervous, I totally wiped out. Thanks for. Walk with greater care, Izuku interrupted, his tone flat. Falling before the battle begins is a sign of poor spatial awareness. He swept past her, his cape billowing. Uraraka stood there, blinked twice, and tilted her head. A bit intense, but cool. The orientation. The auditorium was vast, filled with thousands of examinees. Izuku sat in the middle row, his posture rigid. While other students fidgeted, tapped their feet, or whispered, Izuku sat like a statue on a throne. On the stage, President Mike screamed, "Everybody say hey!" Silence. Tough crowd. Mike shrugged. All right, examinees. Let me break down the rundown. You'll be conducting 10-minute mock urban battles. The screen behind him lit up, displaying the robotic targets. 3 types of faux villains. Points range from 1 to 3 depending on difficulty. Your goal? Shred M. Earn those hero points. Izuku narrowed his eyes under his hood. Robots. Predictable. Yui possesses vast funding, yet they rely on mechanical adversaries. This favors destructive quirks. A flawed metric for heroism, but an excellent playground for me. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A tall boy with glasses and blue hair, Tenya Ida, stood up, his hand raised like a knife. Spotlight hit him. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. If this is a misprint, then UA, the most prestigious school in Japan, should be ashamed. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. Ida then spun around, pointing a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you! The one in the green hood. Izuku slowly turned his head. You've been muttering to yourself this entire time, Ida accused. Calculations, material stress tests, coding languages. It's distracting. If you're here to brainstorm your hobby projects, you should leave immediately. The auditorium went quiet. Everyone looked at Izuku. Izuku stood up. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked bored. And you, Izuku retorted, his voice projecting clearly without a microphone, amplified by a subtle acoustic charm woven into his mask. You are Tenya Ida. From the Somei Junior High. The brother of Ingenium. Ida blinked, taken aback. Ah, yes. How did you? You interrupt the briefing to quibble over a handout error that is obviously a deliberate omission to test our information processing, Izuku stated calmly. And you chastise me for muttering? I was calculating the structural integrity of the robots based on the silhouette shown on screen. I was running tactical simulations. Izuku gestured to the surrounding students. While you were busy polishing your ego and policing the volume of others, I have already dismantled the enemy in my mind 3 times. If my preparation distracts you, then your focus is fragile. A hero does not ask the world to be quiet so he can think. He thinks through the chaos. Izuku sat down. Sit down, Examinee 7111, President Mike said, breaking the stunned silence. And good roast, listener. But the hoodie kid is right. The 4th robot is 0 points. It's an obstacle. A gimmick. If you see it, run away. Ida sat down, his face burning red. He adjusted his glasses, glancing at Izuku. He analyzed the test before it began. Who is he? Battle Center B. The bus ride to the testing grounds was silent. Izuku stood near the doors, ignoring the stares. When they arrived at Battle Center B, the scale of it was impressive. A full cityscape, replicating an urban environment. Izuku stood at the gate. He checked his gauntlets. Power levels at 100%. Mana reservoirs full. Drone uplink standby. Hey! Izuku looked down. Uraraka was there, looking determined but shaky. She was wearing a track suit. Good luck, she said. I mean, not that you need it. You seem really prepared. Luck is for the unprepared, Izuku said. But ensure you do not overexert yourself. Your gravity quirk induces nausea, does it not? Manage your equilibrium. Uraraka's eyes widened. How did you start? President Mick's voice boomed from the tower. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go, go, go. The other students were confused for a split second. Izuku was not. Boosh. Blue flames erupted from the soles of his boots. He didn't run. He launched. He shot over the heads of the stunned examinees, soaring 20 feet into the air. His cape snapped in the wind as he flew through the open gates, entering the city alone. He's flying? Someone screamed. Catch up! Ida yelled, sprinting, his engines roaring. But they were already too late. The sovereign had entered his domain, the conquest. Izuku touched down in the middle of the main street. Immediately, 3 one-pointer robots rolled around the corner, their lenses glowing red. Target acquired, the robots droned. Kill mode. Target acquired, Izuku mimicked coldly. Subjugation mode. He raised both gauntlets. He didn't fire a laser. That would be crude. From his palms, a series of small, metallic discs shot out. They were Doombots, miniature drone spiders. They latched onto the faces of the robots. Interface, Izuku commanded. His mind, enhanced by the connection to the suit's HUD, dove into the code. He saw the robots' firewalls. They were pathetic. Standard encryption. Bypass. Rewrite. Override. In less than 2 seconds, the robot's red eyes flickered and turned green. Command recognized, the robots said in unison. Awaiting orders, Lord Doom. Destroy the others, Izuku commanded. The 3 hacked robots spun around and opened fire on a 2-pointer that was charging down the alley. Missiles flew. Metal crunched. Points 2. Izuku engaged his boot thrusters again, hovering 10 feet off the ground. He moved through the city like a conductor. Every time a robot attacked him, he didn't dodge. He either hacked it or crushed it. A 3-pointer, a massive, scorpion-like machine, burst through a building wall, aiming a machine gun at him. Too slow, Izuku muttered. He reached out with his right hand, channeling magical energy. Chains of Kraken, crimson bands of energy erupted from the air itself, wrapping around the 3-pointer's turret and legs. The metal groaned as the magic constricted. Izuku clenched his fist. Crunch. The robot imploded, crushed into a ball of scrap metal by the mystical pressure. Points, 28. He moved on. Other students were struggling. He saw a boy with a laser naval belt shooting wildly. He saw Ida kicking a robot. Izuku flew over them. He saw a group of 5 one-pointers cornering a girl with earphone jacks. She looked overwhelmed. Izuku descended. Step aside, he ordered. He landed between the girl, Jiro, and the robots. The robots lunged. Izuku extended his arms to the side. From the compartments in his belt, 6 small metal spheres dropped. They hit the ground and activated, projecting a hard light hexagonal barrier around him and Jiro. The robots slammed into the force field, bouncing off. Tech magic combo, overload pulse. Izuku slammed his palms together. The barrier expanded rapidly, exploding outward with a shockwave of EMP and concussive force. The 5 robots were blasted backward, their circuits fried, their chassis dented. Points, 33. Izuku turned to Jiro. Are you injured? No, she stammered, staring at the smoking wreckage. Thanks. Target acquisition is inefficient in groups, Izuku advised. Scatter. He rocketed back into the sky. The observation room. In the darkened room filled with screens, the teachers of UA watched in silence. Who is that? Midnight asked, licking her lips. I love the costume. Very commanding. Examinee 7111. Izuku Midoriya, Nisa squeaked, sipping tea. Interesting. His application lists quirkless on the medical history, but technosorcery on the quirk registration form he filled out himself. Sorcery? Cementos raised an eyebrow. You mean magic? Does that exist? He's certainly doing something unexplainable, Ectoplasm noted. Look at screen 4. He just crushed a robot without touching it, but there were runic symbols in the air. And the hacking, power loader added, leaning forward, fascinated. He's hijacking the school's bots. That shouldn't be possible. I wrote that encryption myself. He cracked it in seconds. All Might stood in the back, his skeletal form hidden in the shadows. He watched the green hooded figure floating above the chaos. The way the boy moved, it wasn't like a hero trying to save the day. It was like a king surveying his land. It reminded All Might of him, all for one. The arrogance. The absolute control. But there was a difference. Izuku wasn't reveling in the destruction. He was methodical. He was protecting students as he moved, creating barriers, hacking robots to create safe zones. He has 60 points, Vlad King said. Combat points, that is. But look at his movements. He's herding the other students away from danger zones. He's not fighting, Aizawa spoke up, his eyes dry and tired. He's managing the battlefield. He's treating this like a strategy game. Nisa smiled, his tail twitching. Well then. Let's see how the strategist handles a force of nature. Nisa's paw slammed down on a big red button, the 0-pointer. The ground shook. It wasn't a vibration, it was an earthquake. Izuku hovered at the intersection of two streets. He had 75 points. He had secured his passing grade. He was analyzing the alloy composition of a defeated robot when the shadow fell over him. Down the main avenue, the asphalt cracked and buckled. Buildings on either side were sheared in half as the 0-pointer rose. It was colossal. A mechanical titan, towering over the skyscrapers. Its single red eye was the size of a swimming pool. Beep. Destroy. The shockwave of its movement sent a cloud of dust rolling through the city. Run! It's huge! That's not an obstacle, that's a monster! The students panicked. The psychological warfare was effective. They turned and fled, screaming. Izuku floated in place, his cape whipping violently in the wind generated by the robot's advance. Size, 150 meters, Izuku calculated. Mass, approximately 2,000 tons. Structural weak point, the neck joints and the primary gyro in the torso. He prepared to turn away. It was worth 0 points. Engaging it was illogical. It was a waste of resources. Oh wow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling concrete. Izuku's head snapped to the right. Ochako Uraraka was trapped. She had fallen, and a massive piece of debris from a smashed building pinned her leg. She was directly in the path of the 0-pointer's treads. The other students were running away. Ida was running away. They were prioritizing their own survival. Doom's voice in his head scoffed. Cowards. They flee while a subject is in peril. Izuku's voice in his head agreed. A hero does not run. Izuku didn't hesitate. But he also didn't panic. He adjusted his gauntlets. Power output to 400%. Bypass safety limiters. He rocketed toward the 0-pointer. Get out of the way! Uraraka screamed, shielding her head as the shadow of the tread loomed over her. Whoosh! A figure slammed into the ground between her and the robot. Green energy crackled around him, arching like lightning. The hood had fallen back, revealing Izuku's face. His eyes were glowing a brilliant, terrifying emerald. He raised both hands toward the massive metal foot descending upon them. I said, Izuku shouted, his voice amplified by magic to boom like thunder, kneel. He didn't use telekinesis to push it back. He didn't punch it. He cast the spell he had been practicing for years. The spell Doom used to bind demons, hosts of Hoggoth. Weave the web. From his gauntlets, thick, glowing chains of green energy, translucent but solid, shot upward. They didn't just hit the robot, they pierced it. They wrapped around the giant tread, then shot into the ground, anchoring the machine to the earth. More chains erupted from the pavement, summoned by Izuku's will. They lashed around the 0-pointer's torso, its arms, its neck. The giant robot groaned. Its motors whined, straining against the magical bindings. The foot stopped inches from Izuku's face. You are nothing but scrap! Izuku roared. He clenched his fists and pulled down. The massive robot began to tilt. The magical chains tightened, crushing the metal armor like aluminum foil. System override. Izuku yelled. He thrust his right hand forward. A beam of concentrated data, a technopathic virus, shot from his palm directly into the 0-pointer's eye. Code Doom. Command shut down. The robot's red eye flickered. It tried to resist, but Izuku's will was absolute. The red light died. The engine sound cut out. The massive titan, the size of a skyscraper, slumped forward, held up only by the green chains. It looked like a captured beast bowing before a king. Silence descended on the testing ground. The dust settled. Izuku stood amidst the rubble, the green lightning fading from his armor. He was breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his forehead. The spell had taxed his mana reserves significantly. He turned to Uraraka. She was staring at him, mouth agape, eyes wide as saucers. Izuku knelt and pointed a finger at the debris on her leg. Levitate. The rock lifted. Can you walk? He asked. I think so, Uraraka squeaked. You stopped it. You made it bow. It was in my way, Izuku said dismissively. He offered her a hand. She took it. His grip was firm, metallic, and cold, but it pulled her up with gentle strength. President Mick's voice crackled over the speakers, sounding stunned. Time's up. The aftermath. The other students slowly crept back. They looked at the frozen zero-pointer, wrapped in fading magical chains. They looked at the boy in the green cloak. Did he just? He took out the zero-pointer. With magic? An elderly woman hobbled through the crowd. Recovery girl. All right, move aside, move aside. Let me see the wounded. She reached Uraraka and kissed her head. Goodness, dearie, that leg looks painful. Fixed. She turned to Izuku. And you? You must be exhausted. That was a lot of energy. She reached out to offer him gummies. Izuku declined with a raised hand. My energy reserves recharge over time. I require no medical intervention. My armor took the brunt of the kinetic feedback. Stubborn, recovery girl huffed. Just like All Might. Izuku stiffened at the comparison but said nothing. He looked around. The students were staring at him with a mix of fear and awe. Even Bakugo, standing near a pile of scrap, looked unsettled. He wasn't screaming. He was just watching Izuku with a look of dawning realization that the pebble was actually a mountain. Ida approached, bowing stiffly. I misjudged you. Ida announced loudly. You perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue component, before any of us. And you possess the power to act on it. I, Tenya Ida, apologize for my earlier rudeness. Izuku pulled his hood back up. Apology noted, Izuku said coolly. Next time, spend less time analyzing the rules and more time analyzing the objective. He turned and walked toward the exit. As he walked, he pulled up his internal HUD. Combat points, 75. Rescue points, unknown, estimated high. Armor integrity, 92%. Mana levels, 15%. Critical. He was tired. His head pounded with the headache that came from overuse of the mystic arts. But as he walked out of the gates of UA, he allowed himself a small, private smile beneath the shadow of his hood. The doctor was right. The world responded to strength. It responded to order. He hadn't just passed an exam. He had staked a claim. Yui is mine, the voice of Doom whispered. We saved her, the voice of Izuku thought warmly. Yes, Doom conceded. We did both. Izuku Midoriya walked home to waiting Katsudan, leaving a legend in his wake.